Is being recorded. This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, hello. After some adventures of a technological order, we begin now the presentation today. We start with a famous artist, Eva Hesse, who unfortunately died very young at 33. She was born in 1936 and died in 1970, but a remarkable, truly very important artist. Let's contemplate a little bit this picture with this artist who not much older than you, well, some years, but not too many, meant a lot for the art world and for culture in general. And we see here an interior which I like to think that architects would have something similar. Why not? Romantic, with a sloping plane, with someone who probably didn't sleep a few nights, working and creating. So Eva Hesse, born on January 11th, and that's why we talk about her today, because today is January 11th, but 2023, was a German-born American sculptor known for her pioneering work in materials such as latex, fiberglass, and plastics. She's one of the artists who ushered in the post-minimal art movement in the 1960s. But she is actually not just a sculptor. Her graphic works and her paintings are formidable, and we are going to see them. So Hesse was born into a family of observant Jews in Hamburg, Germany, on January 11th, 1936. When Eva Hesse was 2 years old in December 1938, her parents, hoping to flee from Nazi Germany, sent Hesse and her older sister, Helen Hesse, to the Netherlands. They were aboard one of the last Kinder transport trains. I guess there was something like this, Kinder transport trains. After almost 6 months of separation, the reunited family moved to England, and then in 1939 emigrated to New York City, where they settled into Manhattan's Washington Heights. In 1944, Hesse's parents separated. Her father remarried in 1945, and her mother committed suicide in 1946. In 1961, so in 46, she was 10 years old. So you can imagine the trauma of Eva Hesse. Being 10 years old, her mom committed suicide. In 1961, Eva Hesse met and married sculptor Tom Doyle. They divorced in 1966. In October 1969, she was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and she died on Friday, May 29th, 1970, after 3 failed operations within a year. Her death at the age of 34 ended a career that would become highly influential despite spanning only a decade. You know, it's okay. Hesse, now I have to move this. It's really maddening, the technology today. Hesse graduated from New York School of Industrial Art at the age of 16, and in 1952, she enrolled in the Pratt Institute of Design. She dropped out only a year later. When Hesse was 18, she interned at 17 magazines, meaning she became an intern. During this time, she also took classes at the Art Students League. From 1954 and 1957, she studied at Cooper Union, a remarkable art and architecture school. And in 1959, she received her Bachelor of Art from Yale University. While at Yale, Hesse studied under Joseph Albers, who was a professor at Bauhaus, and then she immigrated to the States and was heavily influenced by abstract expressionism. After Yale, Hesse returned to New York City, where she became friends with many other young minimalist artists, including Sol LeWitt, Donald Judd, Yayoi Kusama, and others. Her close friendship with Sol LeWitt continued until the end of her life. The two frequently wrote to one another, and in 1965, Sol LeWitt famously counseled a young, doubting Eva to stop thinking and just do. And if you allow me, I will tell the students in architecture what Wolf Prix, the Doctor Honoris Causa at Minku and a very important architect in the world today, answered me when I asked him, what do you recommend students in architecture and architects? And he said, don't think. And here we read something similar, that Eva Hesse received advice from Sol LeWitt, a very important North American artist. Stop thinking and just do. I know it sounds bizarre. Now, what do you mean stop thinking? But there is some truth here, because when you so-called stop thinking, you actually keep thinking, but in a different way, not just with the brain. Your whole being somehow, even the hand thinks. So trust spontaneity, trust instincts, trust intuitions, and just plunge into the work. Begin the work without any sketch. Believe me, it is possible. And in fact, it is so very possible that the program Excessive at IOA, Institute of Architecture in Vienna, recommended exactly this. Don't make any preliminary sketch. Begin the project without thinking, without even, here is my subversive side, without even reading the program, as Wolf Prix himself does. I know it sounds strange and maybe totally irresponsible, but try it once and you'll see it works. Stop thinking and just do. Plunge into the water, even if you don't know how to swim, and you will see that you'll survive and you will actually conquer the conflict, if it is a conflict, with the water. Both Hesse and LeWitt went on to become influential artists. Their friendship stimulated the artistic development of their work. And here I would say, if you could make friends with some students from the Art Institute, from, not just artists, writers, biologists, mathematicians, theologians, name them, enlarge the circle of your friends. This was Eva Hesse, also very sad now, dying at 34. But she left something behind, and we are going to see very, very remarkable works. Eva Hesse. And I would, if you allow me to move on with suggestions, please experiment as widely as possible. Even if the school tells you don't do it, do it. Do it for the pleasure of discovery, for the pleasure of creativity, for the pleasure of having pleasure, for the pleasure of having joy, because without joy, it's not worthy of doing architecture, as it is not worthy of doing art. She is very highly regarded. I mean, not too many women artists are evaluated as highly as Eva Hesse. Some graphic works, and kind of strangely, her graphic works are very colorful, but her sculptures or her installations, they are very, in a way, subdued. They don't use powerful colors, as we can see in the graphic works. And here I would say also, don't run away, don't shy away from color. Please use color. I mean, if you feel like it, you are not obliged, of course, but color is life. I mean, would you eat apples which are white or gray? I don't think so. They better be green or red, and not just apples, of course. Anyway, the graphic works are tensioned because, as we read, she was influenced by abstract expressionism, And although she studied with Joseph Albers, a painter from the Bauhaus who painted very Apollonian pictures with a square within a square with colors, but nothing extravagant, no drama. But apropos of Joseph Albers, I don't know if you know, Tadao Ando said, I would love to do an architecture that is inside like Piranesi and outside like Joseph Albers, the teacher, the professor of Eva Hesse. You can check on Google Images, you know, some pictures of the works of Joseph Albers, if you are interested. But now we still look at the graphic works of Eva Hesse. And again, if you allow me to give suggestions, because I'm absolutely sure in most of you, if not all of you, there is somewhere an artistic side, at least an artistic side. Explore, draw, paint, make a sculpture even. It will free your imagination and your spirit, and you'll find joy. And I would even say, start maybe a project with a painting. Yes, with a painting. Ignore the program, ignore the, you know, I'm absolutely sure that you'll arrive at very interesting projects if you start unconventionally, artistically. I know it sounds crazy, I know, but sometimes what is crazy is good. And that is if you are to bring joy into your work. And I think you all want that, and I want that, and we all want to do creative works. She was an anxious spirit, you know, I'm sure she suffered a lot. You can imagine, you know, losing her mom at 10, and then the parents before that divorced. And, you know, she struggled, and also an immigrant and so on. But she left behind her a very powerful and interesting and intriguing legacy, artistic legacy. Eva Hesse. She totally gave herself to art. She's not the only one. Of course, other people did so and do so and will do so. And I think we need such people, because I think we do need art. I mean, she said that life and art are inseparable. I would agree with her. And if they are inseparable, it means a life without art is not possible, or it's a you know, a depressing possibility, a life without art. You are all artists, at least to an extent. And you know, I talk to you in this way because we have to enhance the artistic side of architecture. Otherwise we die of boredom, really. She produced a very large body of graphic works and also paintings. Here she is again. You know, when you do work that you enjoy, that you love, I am absolutely sure at times at least you forget to eat. You forget that maybe there is no heat in the room, or that there are problems with whatever, because you enjoy doing what you are doing. You are creative. That's why artists in general are not very sensitive to their surroundings. Brâncuș lived very, very, very modestly. You know, all his life, he slept on a lavița, you know, a wooden box, essentially. Even after he became rich, he didn't give up on that, because when you are creative and your soul is expanding because of the imagination and the creativity that you put to work, you know, you ignore, you know, even comfort. After all, Le Corbusier, in his Le Cabanon in the south of France, he was sitting on some wooden boxes, literally wooden boxes. There were no chairs. And he was already over 65. maybe even over 70. He died at 78. This is what happens when you do creative work. You don't need comfort because you have your heart inflamed by imagination, by creativity. So you are engaged with the beauty of creating things that are alive, as opposed to sitting comfortably on a sofa, very soft sofa, and watching a ridiculous movie made in Hollywood by HBO or Netflix or whatever. Sculptures, installations by Eva Hesse. I love this one. It's one of my preferred ones from her work. I'm not analyzing it. I could venture to make some speculations, but I just let you look at it. But I would say that what we see here is the monolith of the sphere, which could symbolize, I don't know, the universe, the earth, some kind of a wholeness. But then there are the threads at the bottom that problematize the serenity of the sphere. And there are maybe some pessimistic overtones here. It's a very interesting work, which you could be inclined to interpret metaphysically or aesthetically or both. I like it very much. I like the fact that she brings in textiles into the work, and textiles are immensely important for architecture. In fact, the very word architecture and architect cannot exist without text, T-E-K-S, which in the Proto-Indo-European language meant to weave. So the second part of the word architecture or architect, texture or text, derives from text, which means to weave, atsese in Romanian, atsese. So the feminine part of the very word architecture is very important. In fact, it's more important than the first one, A-R-H or A-R-C-H. So again, Eva Hesse is very attached to textiles, as we can see here. You could say that she would love the spider, no, the spider net. The spider net, which is also very important. I mean, in this subject, if I keep going in this direction, I can talk to you until midnight because it preoccupies me a lot. The forgotten other half of architecture, which is the feminine side of architecture, and which relates to the act of weaving. But here we see a weaving that appears to be disordered, but I think is charged psychologically, psychically, and I think is very nice. Here she is in her studio, I guess, but she was a very complex artist. I mean, she didn't have necessarily signature pieces. Some of them remind one of Eva Hesse, others less. I like the way she dropped her shoes there. Maybe she takes pictures of herself there. I think it's beautiful to be an artist, and I think it is beautiful to be an architect artist. I mean, just allow your creative forces, your joy, your exuberance to come out in your works, to make them so beautiful, your projects, that you would not think of allowing them to be discarded on tables on the corridors of the school because it's you in those projects. So you want them home because they are personal creations. Make the drawings, make the models, make the projects so intensely personal that they cannot be confounded with someone else's projects, that they are yours, your own creation. To express myself maybe in a banal way, I would say make your project as if it is your child. Invest it in life. And if you invest it with life and with your personality, I think you'll be very attached to it. Don't make indifferent works. Don't make works that are devoid of your individuality. No, no, that's why we need art. We need art badly, because art is telling us to be true to ourselves, to tell the truth about our subjectivity, our soul, our imagination, our mind, our everything, including our body. This was Eva Hesse. Someone else would be someone else, and the work would be different. But this was Eva Hesse. I love this work. Now, of course, you know, how do you transport this work? How do you preserve it like this in a museum? There are big problems in this relation, with this, because this is so fragile. It cannot be kept exactly as the one we look at right now. I love it. I would say, I would tell you, the students in architecture, don't be afraid of disorder. Don't be afraid even of măzgălitură. Make a house based on something like this. Again, coming back to Wolf Prix, I've heard him in a conference in New York saying, this was, you know, a good number of years ago. He said, me and my partner, when they were younger, the way they were doing projects was like this. And I'm not exaggerating. This is the truth. He said, we close our eyes and we explode with lines on paper. And after a few minutes, we open our eyes and then we try to make sense of that explosion of lines. And that's how the first deconstructivist building was built in Vienna, on top of a approximately tall building across the street from the famous post office by Otto Wagner. Anyway, look at other works by Eva Hesse. I don't know if that red heart on the floor is part of the installation, but I like very much the artworks, because, you know, it's the approximation of the rectangularity of an artwork hanged on the wall. But then out of it come these, you know, contorted, you know, I don't know how to call them, you know, maybe they were woven, or I don't know what material she used. But I think the works are very suggestive, and also suggestive of what is unplanned in a way, because these wires, the wires at the bottom, you know, maybe even if there is the wind blowing, well, if the wind blows inside the museum space or the gallery, would move a little bit, or if you touch them with a foot or with a hand. So there is a part which is not rigidly controlled. It's a part that is fragile and subject to you know, the changes of circumstance. Other graphic works, this one a little bit anxious and agitated. I don't know what this picture shows. I don't know who that gentleman is. But again, I love the artists. I love art, and I think we should love art, because without art, you arrive at the conclusion what kind of life and what kind of architecture we would have. We need art. Look at this picture of Eva Hesse, you know. Of course, there is playfulness also, you know. I mean, you cannot do art if you don't experiment, and if you don't do even crazy things, you know. You have to arrive, and I regret I don't have here that beautiful a short text from a great French poet, Arthur Rimbaud, which adds with the words, car il arrive à l'inconnu, because the poet arrives at the unknown. He talks about who the poet is, what is the poet, who is the poet. And he arrives at the, you know, it's a half a page text or a quarter of a page text, but it ends, because it arrives, he arrives, she arrives at the unknown. And I think architects should do the same thing. Arrive at the unknown. Surprise even yourself. Surprise yourself with a building that you didn't expect. It will come out of your own imagination, or your own hand, or your own mouse, or whatever. strive towards the unknown. And I said this before, and I will say it again. SciArc, a very important architecture school in Los Angeles, its motto is to hell with regulations. We are going for the unknown. You understand? We are going for the unknown. Please attempt to do something similar. Go for the unknown, whatever that unknown might be, because we don't know. Like Eva Hesse here, she was also going for the unknown. I mean, why did she cover herself up with that, thread, with that wire like this? Maybe that was her vision of her own unconscious or her own, contorted thoughts, and who knows? Anyway, another work by her, a wrinkled work. Wrinkled work, and I think wrinkles are important even in architecture. Make facades of buildings with wrinkles, like the wrinkles on the forehead of an older person. Why not? Or like the bark of the trees. Don't make only white glittering surfaces. Bring some character, some tactility, some tectonics into the wall. Just as I said, if you could use, I use the word wrinkles, but you understand. Think about the bark of the tree, the bark of the Squarza copacului, how it is. Are we thinking of such matters when we do a project? Not very often, but maybe sometimes we could do it. Another sculpture by Eva Hesse. Apparently there was also eros present in her work, but in a, sometimes in a more obvious way, other times in more abstracted ways. She obviously also welcomed aleatory arrangements, like here. It's the power of chance. And I truly believe that the motto of the Viennese Art, Architecture and Design Biennial of 2019 was engaging and true even. Let's give chance a chance. Să dăm întâmplării o șansă. Let's give chance a chance. Or as they put it, ad literam, change was our only chance. It is through change and through giving a chance that we arrive at the unknown. She explored also various materials. As you can see, these pipes, I don't know exactly, but it looks like some kind of a plastic material. I love this work. It's so delicate and feminine. It's ineffable. It truly is. It's like from the world of dreams. A very, very, very fine work. Now imagine she lived twice as long as she lived, at least twice. No, she died at 34, but she left behind her a legacy which is very rich. And I am myself very interested to continue to study her work. Here she is in front of another work that she did. She's like a little girl, a little girl who assumed the adventure called art. Picture from an older installation or a gallery, maybe a gallery or maybe her own studio. But I love this picture in black and white. This is Eva Hesse. This is her. We look at this and we see her. Artists are very fragile, very vulnerable, you know. It's hard to arrive at success. Sometimes it's hard to even, you know, earn a bread. We know all that Vincent van Gogh, the great painter, couldn't sell any painting except one with the equivalent of $5. And he was forced to commit suicide at 37, but left behind an immense legacy of a very intense involvement with life and actually love of life. So we should admire the artists, you know, because they show us the way, really. They show us the way. And without them, really, I don't know. Maybe you could say I'm of course I defend art because, you know, it's kind of normal. But I mean, for someone like me and with my training and my preoccupations, but it's not just that. You know, some curator here in Romania told me, then bankers, those people who work in banks, they always talk about art, and artists always talk about banks, about money. Well, because we all talk about what we don't have. The bankers have the money, but they don't have culture, they don't have art. So they talk about art. And the artists, they talk about money because they have art, they have culture, they have imagination, they have creativity, but very often they don't have money. So the artists talk about money and the bankers talk about art. Very imaginative works. Maybe she listened in the end to the advice of her friend Solewit, who told her, don't think, just do. So she began to do. But I am sure behind this doing, there was also, you know, meditation and contemplation and anxiety and dreams and nightmares, you know, because artists are not, you know, very indifferent towards the complexities of life. I like this work, you know, because, you know, we have a frame and then we have this wire that this tube, actually, it's in between a wire and the tube that emerges from the frame. And you say, what the heck, what is going on here? You know, there is nothing in the frame, and then you have this wire that comes out. But I find it very suggestive of, I don't know, I mean, philosophically, you could speculate a lot about what she wanted to do here, you know, without thinking. If we are to imagine that she listened to Solewit. You can check also on the web the works of Solewit, who actually thought a lot, and he even, Solewit, the one who told her don't think, actually his artwork is actually based on instructions, written instructions to his assistants. They did the work based on his instructions, but those instructions, and it's a very cerebral work actually, those instructions came at the end of a perhaps long thought process. An important artist himself, Solewit. Now here we see a detail of, you know, of that pipe or wire that comes out of the frame. This one is interesting too, you know, and it's abstracted, but it's also sensuous. There is sensuality here, there is abstraction, there is mystery. You can interpret it in at least several ways, if not many ways. And now we end this presentation about Eva Hesse with some paintings, some artworks that made me think of Pinturas Negras of Goya that you can see at Prado Museum in Madrid. I love painting and I paint myself, but I can tell you, no painting ever moved me as much as that series by Goya. If you arrive in Madrid, and I hope you do one day, if you didn't already, please do not forget to see the Pinturas Negras, the black paintings of Francesco Goya. They're absolutely incredible. And I see some darkness here, I mean, literally, but not only literally, in these works by Eva Hesse. I don't know exactly when she made them. I mean, chronologically, I mean, I see the 61, so she was still young. I mean, she died in 1970, no? So she was, I don't know, 24, 25. A complex artist. What if you start an architecture project like this with a painting, and then you begin to navigate in the difficult realm of so-called functions, you know, and try to locate them in certain parts, invent, experiment, and you might be surprised. The professors, the evaluators might like them too. For example, go to a correctura, if we are to use the well-known word, you know, with 10 paintings, they don't have to be very large. You know, just make them on paper, you know, a certain size, and then transforming them into some kind of a building. Yes, surprise yourself and surprise them too. Put them on the wall, you know, put them all on the wall and surprise your colleagues too. Why not? We need joy, we need color, we need art, we need imagination, we need creativity. Otherwise, we die of boredom. We are approaching the end. I maybe one or two more pictures, and that's it with Eva Hesse. And then we'll go to Dennis Lasdun, a very, very important British architect. But you might be a little bit bored by architecture after seeing the art of Eva Hesse. Although the brutalist Dennis Lasdun was one of the best British architects of his time. Okay, and now we go to, as I said, we'll go to Dennis Lasdun. Just a second, I need to activate the other presentation. Sir Dennis Lasdun, sorry. He earned this degree, you know, this honorary degree, if we are to call it so. Okay, so Sir Dennis Lasdun is also connected with this day, with the 11th of January. So Sir Dennis Lasdun, he was born actually in September in 1914, but he died on 11 January, the 11th of January, January 11th in 2001. Was an eminent English architect, the son of Nathan Lasdun and Julie. Probably his best known work is the Royal National Theatre on London's South Bank of the Thames, which is a Grade II listed building and one of the most notable examples of brutalist design in the United Kingdom. Lasdun studied at the Architectural Association School of Architecture in London. Where else? I mean, this school kept producing unbelievable architects, and they probably still does. If you go to Wikipedia at the bottom of the page and you look for architects who went through that school, you'll see who's who in contemporary architecture. It's just unbelievable. It's a magical place for enhancing the creativity of the students. Anyway, so he studied there, the Architectural Association, and was a junior in the practice of Welsh codes. Like other modernist architects, including Sir Basil Spence, an excellent architect himself, and Peter and Alison Smithson, Lasdun was much influenced by Le Corbusier, who wasn't, and Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. But there was a gentler, more classical influence too from the likes of Nicholas Hawksmoor. Lasdun was elected a Royal Academician on the 29th of May, 1991. This was the man, Dennis Lasdun. Here he is with an inquisitive look on his face. I mean, his eyes. Dennis Lasdun. Then Dennis Lasdun again. The serious and sensitive man, you know, the brutalist word might not do justice completely to his work. I think often we use the word brutalist in order to express some kind of a lack of understanding in a way. But let's see. First, we start with this school that he built in 1952, Hallfield Primary School in Paddington, London. And, you know, talking about art, well, we see here a little bit of art, you know, the manipulation of, you know, the volumes, the you know, the free, the spirited forms that he used. This was when in 1952, not long after the end of the Second World War. But you see, it's an architecture of, you know, obvious modernity. Dennis Lasdun. It's probably a school for, you know, small children, so to speak, not for, you know, higher higher end. No, I shouldn't say higher end. They are all higher end, but all the students. Now the Killing House, Killing, but with K-E-E and not K-I-L-L-E. Anyway, grade 2 listed, meaning what is this grade 2? It means it is protected by the British government and is considered a significant work, a significant architectural work. The first example of post-war council housing to gain this distinction. And sorry about the resolution here. Here you see it better. And you know, when was it built? It doesn't say here, but probably in the 50s or 60s. So, you know, the building even today would appear to have a definite modernity. Look at the cars here. I mean, these are cars from the 50s on the street. But the building is astonishingly modern. And it's not even, it's astonishingly modern, but in a rather, I mean, not in a crazy way, in a rather sustained and you know, so-called decent way. But if you look at the plan, and we are going to see the plan, you see again the movement of the volumes that do matter. And I like very much this picture because it shows the potential of an architecture that doesn't say no to contrast, to harmony through contrast. You see the old buildings have an architecture as you contemplate it, and then the building by Lasdun is, you know, is not in any way trying to mimic a formal, you know, relationship with the old buildings. And I think they work together very well through contrast. I think it's fine. It's a good block of flats. Well, here is you know, this perspectival drawing. At that time, the drawings were done manually, of course. Other pictures from the same block of flats. You see, even housing buildings, why should they be banal? Why shouldn't they have plastic qualities? I think those plastic qualities would benefit the inhabitants, the passers-by, and so on. So, and here we see also disjunctions. There is coherence, there is a unity between the various parts of the building, but there is also separation, and this separation, I think, creates some drama. Then is Lasdun, and here is the plan with access to the apartments from exterior corridors. But you see how clearly the functions are separated or identified. It's very, very clear what's going on here. You have the core with the vertical circulations, the stair, two elevators, and then you have the exterior circulations that serve the duplexes. Maybe they are all duplexes, I don't know, but it's very easy to read this building. And if you look at the plan, and if you look at the building, you understand that, from a program that doesn't promise a lot of possibility for, sculpturalness or artistic expression, the building is engaging, it's interesting, is alive, is even inciting. And I think this is readable already in the plan. But we also see that he was not afraid of assuming certain angles here. No, the apartments are rectangular, but the way he brings together the parts is based on these disjunctions provoked by various angles. It's a good work. Some losses of energy here, it's true, but at the time when he built this building, there wasn't a concern too much with the electrical bills or with the losses of energy. When you dissociate various parts of the building, inevitably you lose some energy because you have a lot of exterior walls. So there are exterior walls here, but the exterior walls contribute to the to the vivacity of the building. We see here a chair and a stool by Charles Eames in this living room, luminous as it is. Now another so-called house, it's a block of flats, an apartment building in East London, 1957. So again, in the 50s. Similar to the previous one, and you see how the potentiality for our architectonic expression of taking out and expressing the volume of the elevator or the staircase, distinctly. If you are in front of this building, you understand immediately how it functions, because the functions are clearly defined, separated, and they contribute to this organism we call the building in very explicit ways. Again, we look at the plan, which is kind of similar to the previous one. It's very simple. Now you have one elevator, you have one staircase, and you have the exterior corridors from which you access into the apartment. For example, here you have the door, you have the stair that goes to the other floor, And here on this floor, we have the master bedroom, very minimal. These are probably not expensive apartments. We have to understand, he built these buildings, you know, a few years after the Second World War. So there wasn't a lot of, you know, space there for extravagant spendings. You know, there was a need for buildings, for housing, and the money, of course, was not so opulent as it is now for some people. But he created something unique, functioning very well, and I think still valid for today. You see, the apartment is very, very economical, and this is what happens when you use an exterior corridor. They are very, very beneficial for good layouts. You know, for example, here you enter, you have the stair that goes to the other floor, and here you have the kitchen, the dining space, and the living room in one with a balcony. Very nice. And it works. It has cross ventilation. I think it works very well. He probably built several based on this scheme, so to speak. This is how you access the apartments, from these corridors. You know, it's okay. It's okay. You pass by the window of your neighbor if you live here, it's fine. Maybe if the neighbor smokes in the window, or who knows, the window is open, you say hello. Hopefully you receive an answer. You know, these spaces being public are encouraging for human interaction. This was a book, Brutalism, Now and Then, Expressive, Sculptural. Yeah, it is. It is. And I see the word raw, R-A-W. And I read that Zaha Hadid, for example, she attempted, that's what she said, I want to create an architecture that is raw, that is earthy, and that is vital. But in my opinion, she didn't arrive by the time she died to that rawness. She arrived at an architecture with vitality, yes, but her architecture is sleek, is not raw, and is not earthy. But maybe she aspired towards arriving here. Maybe if she lived longer, she would have arrived there. Anyway, the beauty of brutalism. Yes, brutalism, maybe the word is a little brutal, and sometimes I think it is, but I think behind the facade, behind the appearance, often, in my opinion, there is a sensitivity at work. And I think did Dennis Lasdun look in his pictures like a, this brutal architect? No, not at all. He looked like a gentleman, and he was. This was the cover of a book, This Brutal World, and on the cover is actually a building by Herzog and de Meuron, built in China. But I wouldn't call it This Brutal World. No, I actually think we need this kind of visceral buildings, sculptural buildings, mysterious buildings in a way, because if you are in the proximity of this building, you would love to explore it. You don't know what it is. So you enter it and you discover things. It's actually called the reading space, believe it or not, because there are various niches, alcoves, and so on, where you can hide with a book and read if you still practice this sport. So Herzog and de Meuron, Jinhua Architecture Park in China. I will show a few pictures with this building, which I like. I like because it shows the potentiality of a building that was built kind of like Levi-Strauss said, we should build our buildings. First build them and then learn how to live with them or within them, how to use them. I know this is totally in contradiction or contradistinction with what functionalism tells us. We always start from a program and we try to, in a kind of servile way, to resolve those functions through our plan and so on. But what if we build a building, Levi-Strauss asked, we just build it and then discover how to use it? Functionalists would tremble, would say, no, 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 it's impossible. But it is possible. And this is an expression. It doesn't look like a building that was built for a specific function. It's more like an inhabitable sculpture, just like Brâncuș said that architecture should be and is, he thought. I don't totally agree with Constantin Brâncuș in this respect, but I like what I see here. I don't know what it is for, I don't know its function, but it intrigues me and it incites me to go inside and explore it. I think it's very nice. Bravo to Herzog and de Meuron. Why is it that these Swiss architects can do such things and we as Latins here in this land don't? Why? And here I see another example, the power of playing when working, because here there is a high degree of playfulness. To arrive at these shapes, you have to be playful, otherwise you wouldn't do them like this. And maybe, Herzog and de Meuron didn't, I'm sure they didn't talk with Solewitt when they built it, but in a way they applied in doing architecture in this way what Solewitt told Eva Hesse, don't think. And look at the child, look at the father, maybe the father or someone, everybody. And obviously these are not very comfortable at all, these sloping, surfaces. But they entice people to explore, which means there is something in the human being that loves discomfort, even if it's engaging, if it's enticing. This man is risking his life here, being so close to the edge of this thing, He's not afraid of falling. As I said, this work is called the reading space. I don't see anyone reading, but it was based actually on an earlier project that Herzog and de Meuron did for this area, which was where the father of Ai Weiwei, the Chinese artist who invited them to do this work, lived. Interesting work, I think. I love it. I like it. I like very much this work of Herzog and de Meuron. I'm not so fond of everything they do, but this one I like. It's visceral, it's intriguing, it's colorful, it's okay, even brutal to an extent, but it's the brutality of honesty in a way. We saw this one. So this is not Denis Lasdun. This is Herzog and de Meuron in China, a more recent work. But we'll go back to Denis Lasdun. These are, books published on brutalist architecture, which became again interesting and even fashionable a few years ago. Okay, now back to Dennis Lasdun. Fitzwilliam College, Cambridge, 1959-1963. Sorry for the resolution. Here you see better. It's not necessarily, a wow architecture. We had seen buildings like this with terraces and, rather predictable, but it's executed very well, and it has an inner monumentality. The geometry is very clear cut. It is a good work. If something disappoints me a little is that it seems to rely on air conditioning, because I don't see, I see a lot of glass, but maybe some small portions of those big windows do open, and I hope they do. Dennis Lasdun. A lot of concrete, of course. Brutalism is brutally connected with and made possible by concrete. I don't know if you know, but Frank Lloyd Wright didn't admire concrete very much. He called it a conglomerate. He used it a little bit, but not a lot. He was not fond of concrete. Royal College of Physicians, again, Dennis Lasdun, London, 1960-1964, again, concrete and concrete and concrete again, but it's not really a brutalist work. I wouldn't call it so. You see, the concrete is very civilized and decent, so to speak. Will arrive very soon at his most famous work, and that is that theater south of London. Anyway, Dennis Lasdun earned his Sir honorary degree, if I am to call it so, based on the quality of his work as an architect. The core buildings of the University of East Anglia, Norwich, 1962-1968. Similar to what we already saw, a little bit neglected here, the concrete work, but maybe they refurbished it, as it seems this is the case in this picture. But it was something around that time, and even Eva Hesse also lived around that time, the end of the 60s, when there was idealism. It was a desire for students to come together, to protest war, to protest the banks, to promote love, make love not war. No, this was the slogan. And it was an idealism, an energy, which I wish will come back. And the collectivism, it was the desire for unity, for interconnectedness. And somehow the architecture expresses it. The Charles Wilson building at the University of Leicester, good building too, in the same kind of architecture with concrete and glass, but with some sculpturalness because of the clarity of the expression of various functions. I would kind of stay away from using too much concrete these days because it pollutes. But at that time, there wasn't a concern with this. So, people used it, not just Dennis Lasdun. Institute of Advanced Legal Studies, Institute of Education. Here it is, an intimidating institute, if you ask me. Quite long and dramatic at the top, as you can see with those sculptural pieces. I don't know what their function is. But it's clear that Dennis Lasdun was, not afraid of masculinist expressions, architectural expressions. And I like the contrast between the opaque, blunt, concrete parts of the building and then the glassed ones. And it's a dialectic here that is engaging. It's to an extent a heroic architecture, and I think we need heroism, and that's why brutalist architecture had a comeback, because of this heroic attribute, which is kind of missing in today's architecture, even when we build very, very tall and very, very, I don't know how, but it's not truly heroic, it's more like the demagogy of high capitalism, which is not really about heroism, and it's not about changing the world by going higher and higher and higher. It's just an expression of a big ego and big money, thanks to the oil. We have the oil, so we have the means to go higher and higher. But it's not really a Zarathustrian architecture. It's not really a heroic architecture. Something is missing, I think, in our time. And now we are confronted with a big crisis, of course. Now we arrive finally at his big work, so to speak, the most famous from his oeuvre, the Royal National Theatre, South Bank, London, 1967-1976. Let's remember, Eva Hesse died in 1970. So it was this seminal time at the end of the 60s, the beginning of the 70s, when really the humankind had a desire for a change, a dramatic change. We had Woodstock now in music. We had the 68 protests of the students in Paris, in London, in the United States. It was the movement of the young ones. The young ones wanted to change the world. And I think we need again such young ones. So this is the theater. It's considered brutalist architecture, but I don't think it's a brutalist architecture. And I like the fact that in more recent times, they played with that yellowness and with, those images attached to maybe some people thought that the blank concrete is not enough. But I like what they did here, I don't mind using the concrete as a background. The building has some spectacular elements. It's very well executed, and yes, it's a very good, very important work. The National Royal Theatre, or the Royal National Theatre, I don't know which one comes first. Then is Lasdun. I love diagonals. I invite you, the students who are here now, to help me create on the 26th of February the Diagonal Festival as an homage to Claude Parent, because it will be the centennial of the important French architect, and he advocated all his life sloping planes, diagonals, oblique planes, and so on. So let's create online works, show works that use diagonals and oblique planes or obliqueness, because the diagonal is, I think, very inducive to dynamic dynamic life. Not too many diagonals in this section, it's true, but there are. We saw them here now. A big theater for London, for a big city, of course. Then is Lasdun. Is it brutal? I wouldn't think so. No, for me, it's not brutal. It's thrust, but not brutal. It's vigorous, it has vivacity. Yes, it does. But the concrete is not offensive, in my opinion. And colors help again to bring some joy, you know, having as a background the grayness of concrete. Concrete again, for today's world, we should kind of stay away from concrete because it is polluting. But there is today the so-called hempcrete, meaning concrete made from kunepe, from hemp. Incredible. Yes, there is such a thing. The red structure there was not built by Dennis Lasdun, but I like it very much in contrast with the building by Dennis Lasdun. So again, color does help. We need color. Dennis Lasdun. Now, the red structure was built, and with this, I end this short presentation on Dennis Lasdun by this man, this architect, Howard Tompkins. The shed, it's called the shed in London, is the red one. At first, I thought it was done by Bernard Tschumi, but no, it was done by Howard Tompkins, the shed. London. On the right, Dennis Lasdun. On the left, the shed, the red shed. Nice. Some people might say, well, this is the brutality of color. Come on. Come on. It's the brutality of blood, which is red. It's the brutality of the sun, which is red sometimes. It's the brutality of heat, which is red, of fire, that is, and is the so-called brutality of love, no, which is also red. No, it's not about brutality. It's about passion. It's about intensity. Redness represents intensity, and it represents life. Blood itself is red. Can you imagine having in your veins a gray blood? I mean, what could be more grotesque? Or a gray heart, or a gray love? Who wants a gray love, for God's sake? Nobody. So let's make it red, including the passion for architecture, please. The more red, the better. And here we see in the background the great St. Paul Cathedral by Christopher Wren, this most famous architect, British architect who never studied architecture. He was actually a physicist. And many, many buildings in London, and not only in London, are built by Sir Christopher Wren. And on the right, the concreteness of Dennis Lasdun, and in the front, the red shed. Thank you. So happy birthday, Dennis Lasdun.